Now, while we are gathered here today to talk about building that better future, we also can't ignore the forces that are working against that vision, not just here or south of the border, but around the world. Our next keynote speaker knows this struggle firsthand. As a member of the European Parliament, Matthias Ecke has seen how the far right thrives in moments of crisis, fueling fear, deepening division, and undermining democracy. Representing a region in East Germany where the far right is on the rise, Matthias has stood on the front lines of the fight to counter extremism and defend democratic rights across Europe. His message is clear. In the face of economic insecurity and political instability, we need to build power and counter despair with real investment in people. Please join me in welcoming Matthias Ecke to the stage.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. That's a tough one to have a political speech after this performance, yeah? I promise you to be more boring than they are. As you already know, I'm a member of the European Parliament from Germany, and it's my second time in Canada. Yeah. It's my second time. And the first time was it's a bit of family history, was 30 years ago, because we visited part of my family. I grew up in the east of Germany. I was born in the GDR, in the state socialist part of it. And back when, in the late 50s, before the Berlin Wall was built, then the brother of my grandpa and his wife, they left the country. It was still possible then because the wall was not built. And they moved to Vancouver, of all places. So I was in Vancouver. If anyone from Vancouver is here, please send wishes to Uncle Jürgen. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So, well, I want to talk about the rise of the far right and what you can do about it and against it. And the first thing I would like to ask you is, do not listen to me. Do not listen to me, because I don't know if it's successful, what I can tell you. Because if you look at the numbers, you will probably guess it's not. What we've done against the far right apparently has not been very successful in the last years. Why? You've seen in a lot of European countries, the far right are very strong. They now have, we have governments in Europe that are led by far right forces in Hungary, in Italy. We nearly had it in Austria, where in Austria the far right party is the strongest. In France, they're extremely strong. In Germany, they came second for the national elections, and so on. So apparently something's going wrong. We are living in a world of crisis. This is something that we discuss here all together. And we know that especially for workers, these crises come with a lot of insecurity. And from European experience, I think it's probably similar to what you experience here. It's economic insecurity, the recession, the challenges that come with the green transition, and also the more crisis we have, then business comes higher on the agenda. We now have more and more business-first agenda that also threatens workers' rights. But to be honest, we also have, and this is part of the story, we have a physical insecurity. In Europe, we've seen the war against Ukraine, which is a neighbor of the European Union. So many hundreds of thousands of people have died in Ukraine, and people all over Europe, especially in the East, they feel insecure. They feel that the war could come to Europe. The war is in Europe. It could come to the European Union, and that Poland, the Baltic states, they could be. We had the discussion that we should not be part of the war, while in the same physical insecurity. And in all this, how powerful are the nation states? How powerful is government in that I think is one of the key issues in how the far right is working. The far right in Europe is divided in many, many issues. They're divided on political economy. You have some far right parties that are like libertarian, they're extremely pro-business and anti-union. We have some that are more like state interventionist and try also to have a good relation with the union, which usually doesn't work, but they are more state interventionist. They are divided about their Western orientation, so some are best friends with Russia's Vladimir Putin, and some are more like neocons, like George W. Bush. That's something that you can imagine. But they are united on other issues. They are united on cultural wars, gender, migration. They're united on anti-ecologicalism, like anything that has to do against climate protection, against the green transition, against carbon taxes and whatsoever. And they are united in their nationalism against EU integration. And this is something that is very important. The far right has managed to kind of decouple their support also from the economic situation, because they are not only exploiting insecurities, they are creating insecurities. I think we must be very clear about that. They are entrepreneurs of polarization, and they keep going and going and going, and they do not want to get things settled. They do not want to get problems solved. They want to continue and to make them bigger and bigger, and they say the worse the situation is, the better for us, so we keep on polarizing. So any successful social democratic strategy, in my point of view, needs to start with the depolarization, especially of those cultural wars. And we need, in the same time as progressive forces, left-wing forces, to fix everyday issues, everyday problems, socioeconomic problems of the working class. So how can social democrats, by giving working class people a better life, taking on the far right? How can that work? Well, I'll talk about policies later, but a little bit I want to question the assumption underlying it. Because, to be honest, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it works like this anymore. Because, as I told you, we have to re-establish the nexus between improving the lives of people and fighting the far right, because they're very successful in decoupling that. That means improving the lives of people, of working class people, is a necessary precondition of successful social democratic progressive campaigns. But it's not something, this is obvious, but it's not something that alone works, because they've been very good at communicating their hate and their polarization even beyond it. But we will never be successful if we don't address these issues. If we don't address working class lives, improving their lot, if we don't address that. But we must address it in a way that address working class people in their class identity as workers. And workers, this is what we know from research, workers who think of them as workers, who think of themselves, and the first thing as workers, who think of their problems being also a result of class struggles, they are much more likely to resist the far right than those who think of themselves as, in terms of nation, in terms of gender, in terms of whatever cultural preference, in terms of consumer preference, in terms of their car drivers and sports lovers. We need to address socioeconomic problems as class problems. We need to reach out to workers as workers. And the policies in favor of working people, this is the baseline of every successful campaign. So let me talk about three major things. One is wages. It is about setting and increasing minimum wages. That has always been a successful issue in our campaigns. In Germany, we have increased the minimum wage. We will continue so, and it's really helping the most vulnerable of our citizens. We have also to improve the conditions for wage bargaining. I mean, this is extremely important also for the unions. This is something you can do by law. I know there are different traditions in different nation states, but the more unions are encouraged to bargain, to collectively bargain, to favor the working class, improve their wages, the better it is, not only for union membership, but also for the general good of society. And we have to fight inflation. And this is not by having like a very fiscal hawk, conservative monetary policy. It is also a lot about what we call greedflation, like companies that increase prices because they make so much profit, and it's something that is not explained by monetary policy alone. We have to fight greedflation, we have to fight inflation to make real wages pay. Second thing is public services. I think it's absolutely obvious, and it has always been a core of our struggle, that free healthcare, free education is the best way of redistributing. It's the best thing that can happen to working class people in our societies. And we see in the constant attack of the conservatives and also of the far right on these universal services. And they sometimes start with, so, oh, this is universal services. Also foreigners benefit from it. Also, like refugees benefit from it. So we have to exclude them. This is their strategy. They start with exclusion, and then they totally rip off public services. And this is something that we cannot accept and will never accept. The same goes for public transport. I mean, it's extremely important to have a good net of public transport. What we managed to do in Germany was that we now have an affordable ticket. It goes nationwide and allows you to travel with local and regional trains in the entire country, which is quite a thing in such a federalized country like Germany, where every single city has their own ticket and so on. So this is something that really helps improve everyday lives of working class people, improves the everyday lives of a lot of citizens, and this is something that we should put forward as far as we can. And one thing that I need to talk about also as the third major policy issue is a successful transition. I cannot stress this enough. I know that you have big debates here in Canada also about carbon taxes, about green transition, about how the costs of the green transition is distributed. And I think this is a very important issue also in fighting the far right. I think we have to be clear on pro-climate policies. We have to protect our climate. We have to do it internationally. We have to do it with policies that really work. But we have to be very careful who bears the burden of these policies. And we will always be, the far right will always attack us because they do not believe in climate change as if this something is that you could believe in. But they always say, okay, we have to pay, we are people from rural areas, there are people that need their cars, there are people that have houses that are not so well isolated and so on and so on. And this often is vulnerable communities that pay more carbon prices, you know that, and so we must be very clever in designing our policies, but we must not back down on climate protection, never. What not to do? I don't know. You've probably seen the picture here on the wall. It's displayed. It shows me from the back in Berlin. There was a big rally against the far right in the run-up for the European elections last year in summer. And we had a lot of big rallies that mobilized hundreds of thousands of people because the threat of the far right feels it's so threatening for a lot of people. With all the history that we have in Germany, in Europe, with all the unspeakable things that they put forward. So we managed to really gather a lot of people against the far right. And it was a total honor for me to speak in front of tens of thousands of people in Berlin. And you know that, some of you might know that I came to the center of attention in this debate, and on a very personal note, I was attacked during the last electoral campaign on the European elections. I was attacked from far right, a youth gang and they beat me down, and I had to take surgery in a hospital, and it was really ugly thing. But then we had a debate about the far right and the way that they threaten democracy and the way they threaten political activism. And I always said it's not about me, it's not about someone who happens to be a member of a parliament. It's about our political activists. It's about freedom of expression. It's about freedom of political engagement, freedom about political activism. But it's something that we always brought it up. We said, okay, this election is about democracy. This election is about our liberal institutions. This election is about the entirety of our society. And I came to realize that it does not really work that way. It's wonderful to speak at rallies like this. And it's wonderful to have people in the streets for hundreds of thousands. But we always have to, we mobilize our people, and the far right mobilizes theirs against. So this is one part of a successful strategy, but it should not replace a strategy. And I think that was something that we probably did not really do right as social democrats. We kind of replaced our policy agenda, making working class people's lives better, by saying, go to the ballots, participate in the elections, do not let the far right win. This is right, but it's not enough. So an abstract defense of the liberal democracy that is detached from the results of the policies that we deliver for the population, this is not going to work. It's not going to work. We tried it several times, and I think it's not going to work. So we have to say, defend the principles, but we make your life better. And we take on the far right, not just by exposing and accusing them, but by proving that we can do things better. And let me just give me one last remark. When I'm here in Canada as a representative of the European Union, I want to say my best wishes of solidarity, and I want to convey all the best wishes that I can from Europe, because I think that the perception of Canada has dramatically changed in the EU over the last months. Let's say this. It has dramatically changed when you were attacked by the Trump administration in this unspeakable way. A lot of Europeans were rethinking our common partnership. Let's say that some people might have thought of Canada as a smaller and slightly more likable brother of the United States. But now it changed, like that your country is perceived as a complete antidote to the US of Donald Trump. There was outrage also in Germany, in Europe, at the imperialist remarks and the imperialist actions of the Trump administration. And so one thing that we really need to do is we need to intensify our relations. I know that today the Commission President spoke to Prime Minister Carney, and we had also talks with our Chancellor Olaf Scholz and the Prime Minister, and I think on a lot of issues we continue to improve our relation. We have a trade agreement, and I think that we can even work closer together. I was on a, last remark, I was on a trade fair, industrial trade fair in Hanover a few weeks ago. It's the biggest trade fair in Europe on industrial issues. And our partner country this year happens to be Canada. Yeah, this is something that was agreed 3 years ago, so no one could really know. Things take some time in Germany, so we need some preparation. And we had this opening, and because of the campaign here, the leadership of the government could not take part, but there was a special envoy to the European Union of Canada who spoke among like 1,000 people, most of them like industrialists, CEOs from companies, like not very activist, radical people, I can tell you. Yeah? But they were like cheering, standing ovations in support of Canada, in support of our relation. And what the special envoy said was, we knew that we appreciated each other, but now we know that we need each other. And this is also my feeling. All the best. We support you whatever we can. Thank you very much.